Hey guys, I'm Will from Tested.
And I'm Norm from Tested.
Norm, something kind of big happened today.
So Adobe, the makers of Photoshop.
Wait, what?
Yes, and Lightroom and the Creative Cloud suite of programs.
Okay.
Released what I believe to be their first piece of hardware for tablets.
I think it's their first piece of hardware ever.
It might just be.
Yeah. So this is, they hinted this at Adobe Max, which is their big developer conference last year.
Yeah, and this is called the Adobe Ink and Slide. When they originally announced it, they called it Project Mighty and Napoleon, and I'm going to pop this out.
Which one's Napoleon? The small one with its hand in its jacket?
That is indeed the character, the historical figure Napoleon. But it's a stylus and a kind of a smart ruler. They think that this is the best stylus made for the iPad, and it is a device made just specifically for iOS devices.
So what's the stuff that makes it special, Norm?
Well, we should go through a whole history of styli.
We're going to make people watch some history before we talk about the product that they care about?
Absolutely, because we tested a bunch of stuff that we haven't talked about yet.
We have tested a bunch of styluses, and not all of them are good.
No.
Most of them are not good.
So a couple years ago, a company called Studio Neat released this. This is the Cosmonaut, and we did a review of this. We thought it was nifty at the time. When the iPad first came out, we were trying to figure out, people wanted to write with something that felt like a pen.
What could you do with it? We were trying to figure it out, and these guys were out early. They're the same people that made the Glyph, which is that kickstand kind of tripod mount for your iPhone 4 or 5.
And they thought that because the iPad and iOS devices are designed for your finger, a big point, they thought that the Cosmonaut should also mimic that finger.
Well, because the precision on the digitizer on the iPad isn't great compared to, say, a Wacom a tablet.
It's a completely different type of sensor.
It's a completely different kind of sensor. Like the fat crayon feel of that thing seemed like it made a lot of sense, and it's not bad.
It's not bad. It's big. It's comfortable to hold. But the most important part is this tip here. It's a pretty fat tip. You compare it to a finger. The way the iPads are designed, they want to respond to about like a half a centimeter, 6 millimeter tip, and so you can actually depress it. It's hollow inside. It's a little hollow, and it's a little plastic tip, and you can use it on an app. This app I have right here, and it works. It works as just like your finger would. So
the thing that's neat about the Cosmonaut is because of that soft, squishy tip, you can actually mimic. It doesn't have pressure sensitivity because it's just a dumb piece of plastic.
Yep.
But you can actually kind of mimic a pressure-sensitive stylus by pushing more and having more of the surface come in contact, pushing less and having less of the surface come in contact.
They still sell this for $25, which I think is really expensive for what we now know the iPad is good for.
You could get a sausage for $1, and it does the same thing.
Yes, you could. Nathan's Hot Dogs works just as well.
Just go down to the grocery store, meat counter.
So that's like a dumb stylus, and there are plenty of companies, in China.
3M,
you can buy.
Everybody makes them.
Yeah, $2, no problem. And so we have this generation of what we can call smart styluses, styli, and this is one called Pencil.
So the next thing that people started doing was putting electronics in, because the problem with the iPad and styluses, whatever, is that the capacitive touchscreen of the iPad doesn't allow pressure sensitivity.
Right.
So it either knows that something's touching it or it knows that nothing is touching it, and then all the software that you use to draw on the iPad that mimics pressure-sensitive styluses uses tacks. Like that paper app, you go slow to make a thick stroke, and you go fast to make a thin stroke.
The opposite.
It's the other way around. Okay. Anyway.
So, and not only is it just a fundamentally different type of sensor, you mentioned the Wacom tablets earlier. Like, for example, the Microsoft Surface uses a smart digitizer, which is not necessarily Wacom technology, but it is made specifically for the stylus that they're included. The iPad isn't just a capacitive touch sensor. The software is dumbed down, so it's good for fingers, good for fat touch points.
And there's a lot of software interpolation that accounts that compensates for the fatness of your finger. Like when it knows from your behavior where your impacts are and where you intend to hit generally, which is one of the things that the iPad does, and all tablets for that matter.
The things that make it good for a finger make it bad for a sharp tip. Is the bottom line. So to get around that, companies such as 53, now these are the guys who used to work at Microsoft on the Courier project. They released first an app. It's called Paper. Now when they first released Paper, this is just your normal sketching, drawing app. And like you said, you draw real slow to make a thin line, but the faster you go, the thicker the line goes. So this is simulating using a brush. So this is the brush tool, and you can use like a thinner tool like to draw really fine lines. And then they had things like rewind, so you can use a little radial dial to go backwards.
For what it's worth, I think Paper is my favorite of the iPad drawing apps.
Yeah, if you want to just sketch and give it to a kid and sketch with your finger, this is great for that.
Even if you're sketching and you don't care about precision. Like if you want to sketch on graph paper, it's not good for that. But if you want to just be able to draw an artist's rendition of something really quickly, then it's pretty good. So far, you're not going to take notes with that. That was when we first looked at the Cosmonaut. I think we were all hoping that we would take our iPad into meetings and use that instead of a notepad, and it doesn't work.
It still doesn't work.
Paper is no good for that as well, and Paper lacks things like palm recognition. So
it has palm recognition.
It does when you use the pencil, but not when you're just using touch, right?
It has palm recognition, but it disables multi-touch.
Right.
So the thing that they released later last year was the complement to their paper app, which they're calling Pencil. And this is actually a premium smart stylus. And what makes it a smart stylus is that there are electronics inside. So not only does the front work as a normal capacitive stylus, but the app knows when the tip of the stylus is touching the pen, or touching the surface of the iPad. So I can actually pop this out.
Wouldn't the app know that anyway from the capacitive touchscreen?
Well, that's how there's the palm recognition.
Oh, okay. So it knows that. Okay, so it registers pressure on the pen side, sends that back to the iPad, and said, "Okay, you can go now."
Right, without actual pressure sensitivity. So there's actually some electronics here, and this plugs in the USB to charge it. So you do need to charge it, once every 2 months or so. And it's still a soft tip. So just like that Cosmonaut that we showed earlier has, a nubby tip, and it's squishy at the top. Pencil is still squishy. Now it's a little bit of a finer tip. It's not quite as fat as the Cosmonaut. And the design of this pencil, I think it's a carpenter's pencil, makes it flat. You can actually pop this tip out, and they include a couple replacements. So I'm going to show you right now.
So if you wear it off, or
if you wear it down,
okay,
you can actually replace what's inside here. There's actually a spring here. You can kind of see it. This is the capacitive tip right here, and you can see it. I can bend it back around, and that's what gives it that responsive feel.
Is the tip as soft and squishy, or is it more firm than the Cosmonaut?
It is still squishy, so it still depresses. You can see it depresses right there. But there's Bluetooth in here, and also one of their innovations is that there's Bluetooth in the back for the capacitive sensor in the back. So the app knows.
Is it Bluetooth in the back, or is it just an accelerometer in the stick that tells it when it's up or down?
Maybe it's an accelerometer.
Okay.
But it's connected via Bluetooth. And this is the first time I saw a pretty innovative thing that they did, which is pairing the pencil and the app. So the pencil, if I tap on here, you can see that it's basically touching the Bluetooth tip to the pencil, and it says that I'm tethered this pencil to this app.
Yeah.
And so it knows that I'm drawing something, and for example, I'm drawing that. But if I flip it around, it knows I'm using the back of it, and it works as an eraser.
And can you configure that back to be different things, or is it always just an eraser?
It's just an eraser.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's trying to simulate, more of a real pencil tool, and I think it's easier than using your finger and switching around to the eraser tool. But this is not, again, going to be a replacement for this. For a real pen,
right? You're
not going to be doing the note taking that we want to do with the iPad.
Right. I mean, like I said, rough sketches, not plans. You can draw what you think something's going to look like, but if you want to do stuff to scale, then you need a better tool. And also, there's no capacity to do straight lines. Like one of the things that if you're drafting, you need two things. You need a pen, and you need something to make straight edges with. Right.
Right. And right now, these are just loose drawings. I mean, having that brush stroke look to this app, where the faster you draw, the bigger the brush stroke is, it's a really nice aesthetic, and I think it's using, it's using vector-based.
Is that supposed to be me?
Maybe. Yep. Okay. I'm at your glasses.
Okay.
There we go.
So
you can do loose sketches. It's fun for kids. This is $75 for this walnut finish, $60 for the graphite finish. I think it's really expensive for something.
Are they functionally the same? They're just cosmetic differences?
Functionally exactly the same. It's really expensive if you're looking for something that you're just going to doodle with.
And just to be clear, all of the stuff that we've tested to date is stuff you're going to doodle with. Like, there's nothing you can get. It's really hard, even at the best of times, and we'll talk about this more with the next one. It's hard to join up lines precisely.
Right. Unless you're a professional doodler and you can make money drawing sketches. Now, I believe artists
Yeah.
can do pretty great things with the pencil and paper apps.
Absolutely.
And you can do things that you can sell online, and you can take screenshots and export it as nice rasterized images.
We've seen gorgeous like watercolors and like faux watercolors and stuff like that that came out of paper. I think your dad drew some when we tested one of the last
and there's some
styluses.
smudgy brush tools that are pretty nice. But it's for fun. Like, unless you're a professional artist, this really is unnecessary. So as you alluded to, some people do want to make styluses and apps that pair together that are for maybe more productivity tools.
Yeah.
And so we have a third company. This is the Adobe Jot
Is
script.
that how you pronounce it? Adonit? Or is it Add-on-it? I don't know.
I've always pronounced it Adobe.
Okay, that sounds right.
Adobe Jot script, and this is the Evernote version, so it has Evernote green in the back. And this is another one of those smart styli.
So you connect it with Bluetooth. All these are Bluetooth LE, I think. So they're very low power consumption.
Yeah. On both the iPad side and on the tablet side.
Right.
And what you'll notice is different about this stylus is that the tip is much finer than you found on the Cosmonaut and on the pencil.
It's like a really fat pen, basically.
Yeah, it's even like this is a crappy pen. This is like your old Bic pen that you can get.
Here's your 0.38 millimeter.
A nicer 0.38 sub-millimeter. This is a 2 millimeter tip on this Adobe Jot script, which is a big jump.
It seems like it. I thought it should be better than it was in practice. It still doesn't include pressure sensitivity. It has an accelerometer, so it can tell, which it uses to kind of tell how you're holding the pen in relation to the iPad. So that's how, when you get to the finer resolutions, one of the problems you have is parallax. And what parallax is it's the difference in perspective that comes from the depth of the screen versus the surface of the glass. How deep when you line up your finger on a touch screen and you feel like your finger doesn't touch the place on the touch screen that registers, that's typically because of parallax.
Right. So when you think of an iPad, there's a capacitive sensor layer on top. There's a big piece of Gorilla Glass or whatever hardened glass.
Special magic glass.
And then the LCD is actually, the grid of LCD light pixels is behind that. And I can actually
a little bit.
illustrate that here. If you look at the tip of this pen, I'm just going to draw a line from left to right. You can see that there's a gap between where the tip of the pen is and where the image is appearing on the screen.
But when you're looking at it from your perspective, you don't see the gap. It's because we're doing it over the shoulder here.
Right, so because you're looking at it from the left side, you can see that gap. From my side, because I'm looking at here, it looks right. It looks like it's approximately right. So the parallax, this height differential exists, but the way the software tries to compensate for that is that you let it know what direction you're looking at the iPad, which direction, how you hold the pen. So if I hold the pen, for example, from up here like that, maybe that parallax is more apparent to me. I can definitely see that gap right there.
Right.
If I hold the pen like that,
like you in a more natural position,
then that difference is less accentuated.
But it's basically simulating. It's accommodating the parallax in software, basically.
So this Jot script pen is also paired with an app, and this is
There's several apps actually. They have APIs for it. So it's the Penultimate is Evernote's software that does this. Note Shelf and GoodNotes, which I didn't actually use, also work with it. But Penultimate, the neat thing about Penultimate is you can save it. You can take your notes and then jam it straight into Evernote, and it shows up in a Penultimate Notes folder in your Evernote account, which, if you're an Evernote user, is kind of handy. The problem I had with this is that it's still not pressure sensitive. So you can see in your writing, I think you wrote note taking there, but my notes always end up looking like that. And when you're writing cursive writing, then it's almost unintelligible.
Yeah.
It feels like the kind of thing that if you had some sort of shorthand or something that you were writing, like you were a stenographer in the 70s or 80s, then it might be pretty useful. But it's not. I couldn't take readable notes on an iPad, on a 10-inch iPad or a 7-inch iPad with it.
And when you're taking notes on a real sheet of old school paper, you're writing real small. You're trying to pack density. You may be drawing diagrams. Here, I'm intentionally writing big because I know that the system can't accommodate fine writing. I tried right there.
Try to write a sentence that,
and that's real small.
It's chicken
gibberish.
Scratch. Yeah,
I could. There's no way I can read that.
I think you can zoom in on the software. So.
Yep, there it goes.
Yeah, so you can do it that way, and it has a kind of gradual left to right movement when you start writing that will make that work a little bit, but it's not. I found it really difficult to use. It seemed like the kind of thing that if I really wanted to make it work, I could probably do it. But it was easier just to take a piece of paper and then take a picture of the piece of paper with my phone and put that in Evernote instead.
I mean, these are all kind of hacks, kind of like it's the engineers at both Evernote and Adobe trying to compensate for just the iPad not being made for this type of practice.
Intentionally not being made for this type of practice.
And they're smart. I mean, the way it zooms in and scrolls, if you're just, you can train your hand and train your brain to maybe write that way, but it's not natural.
So the one thing that I did hope was that because Penultimate allows you to write on graph paper, I was hoping you would be able to use this to do more detailed diagrams. And the thing I found was that even on the big iPad, it's too small. Getting your lines to register well is hard. There's no straight edge, so you can't make straight lines easily. And even if you could, it would be hard to get them to line up. It's not. I found myself going back to paper almost immediately. I used this for a few hours and knew that it wasn't something I would use in
You don't mean paper the app, you mean real paper.
I mean paper-ass paper from a tree. Yeah, or just a big-ass notepad of graph paper.
I do have to commend Adobe for the way they developed this 2mm
It's great.
tip technology, and it's actually, it requires batteries. So there's a AAA battery in here. It will run out in X many months.
I used it for 3 weeks with no problem. I just put a AAA and a loop in it.
And that allows it so that it's not the dumb sausage to iPad to capacitive sensor marking. It's recognizing what the iPad, what type of capacitive sensor it's writing on, and sending electrical signals back so that it draws on screen. That actually allows it to you can draw it basically at any angle. You can draw, like you're doing calligraphy there, or you can draw if you're doing light sketching. I'm drawing at a pretty steep angle, and it's still registering.
The thing I'll say is that because now the bad news about that is that means it won't work in apps that don't support it, or it doesn't work very well.
It doesn't work very well. It works best when there's a Bluetooth connection to the app, and also it needs the power.
It's turned on.
Right.
The one benefit of this is the palm recognition actually worked. It's the first one of these that I can say unequivocally the palm recognition was pretty good on.
And so the way palm recognition works is that when it detects the pairing of the app and the stylus, without touching of the tip of the stylus, it won't recognize any of your touches. What that also means is that your multi-touch gestures, your 3-4 swipes across the
your OS level multi-touch stuff.
All of that is disabled.
And it also means that you have to put your palm down first and then the stylus, not the other way. Or if you touch them both simultaneously, weird things happen sometimes.
All right, so let's get to the new product, which was announced today and released today. This is Adobe's Stylus. So we've gone through the spectrum of dumb and smart stylus, and Adobe thinks that they have a solution. So like we mentioned earlier, it comes in this case. There's 2 parts to it. The pen is actually in this case, which is how it charges. There's a micro USB right there.
How long did you find the battery lasted, Norm?
It lasts. I haven't charged. I charged it once, and it's still working.
I didn't charge it at all.
So I'm going to pop the tip here, and I don't know if you. I'm actually putting my microphone close to it because you can actually hear this nice little champagne pop.
It's airtight. It seems like it's airtight in there.
That's just a nice little finish. And this is the pen.
I think they promised 8 hours of battery, of drying time, touching to surface time.
Yes. So if you're just on and off, leaving it idle, I'd say you're going to get a good 2 weeks to a month. And then this actually cap pops off. If you look inside on the back here,
down a little bit.
These 3 touch points are the connective points for how it charges. So that's how it actually plugs into here. Don't push the pen into here first and then cap it, because it will get stuck. And
really?
You want to put the cap in first, plug this in first, and then plug the cap in.
And you can also just leave, it will charge just in the butt end of the cap.
Yes.
You don't have to have it in the sleeve.
You can just push it in the cap. There's an LED in the back, which is a nice touch. It doesn't have the eraser functionality that the pencil does. But Adobe went for this little triangle design, this curved triangle design.
What did they call it? A twisted triangle?
Twisted
triangle. They used
triangle.
hydroforming to make it, which I thought was kind of neat.
Yeah, it's kind of, the production process is kind of neat. I think the most important thing is just like the diameter of this, if you think of it as a circle, and I think for my hands, I have medium-sized hands, it works. It's comfortable.
We always make fun of people who say things feel good in their hand, but as a pencil or pen should, it is very comfortable in your hands. It worked great for me.
In different types of positions too.
Yeah, I mean, I could hold it with the kind of claw finger grip, or the more normal, kind of, hey, here's how I hold my pencil. It fit felt comfortable either way.
Now, if you'll notice on the tip of this, this is the Adobe Ink. It's also a fine tip, and it is exactly the same 2mm tip as in the Adobe Jot script.
I think it's bigger than the Adobe Jot script.
I think it's actually a little bigger as well.
Yeah,
they say 2mm. Adobe rates theirs as 1.9 or something. But it's licensing the technology. Adobe actually physically makes this pen.
Oh, they make the pen?
They
manufacture.
okay. They manufacture the pen as a hardware partner for Adobe. So it's using the same, what they call pixel point technology as a pen. And like I said before, it requires power to use. So
so this one, I thought this one would work with it when it was off.
No. So watch. If you look here, it's not registering at all. As the iPad.
When you hit the power button, it turns on?
If I hit the power button now here, and you can see that the tip now glows. So there's power. Now
sure enough. Okay.
So it needs power for the pixel point, this fine tip, to respond to the capacitive surface.
Okay.
And this is a USB charge. It's not like the AA. You can't swap out the battery anytime. You just have to plug it into micro USB.
But I think they said in like 30 minutes it charges halfway or something.
Yeah, so it's a pretty fast charge. So this will work in something like paper just fine. So I can bring back
even if it's not paired with the device. Okay.
So as long as there's power, it will work. I changed my tip here, change my tip, there it goes.
Okay.
It'll work just fine as a unpaired stylus. It's not
just like the Cosmonaut.
Right, like look, it can try to pair, but it's different APIs. It's not the pencil. This is the Donut's thing. It's not actually going to pair, but it works in any other app. But it's really made to work with Adobe's apps. And so this is actually an iPad they provided because these apps are released today. We're getting it early. Adobe has 2 apps that they're releasing along with the Ink and Slide.
Hold on, we forgot an important part of this. The big difference on this pen, on the Ink, versus all the other stuff we've talked about is it has pressure sensitivity.
It also has pressure sensitivity.
Right. So the pressure sensitivity happens in the tip of the sensor, not just in the motion of the writing. Some sort of mimicking of exactly.
It's not it's not approximating the pressure sensitivity. It's actual pressure sensitivity, and has 2,000 degrees of pressure sensitivity.
Right.
Adobe wants to tell you that don't compare this to a Wacom, because the way a digitizer works, and you can, if you've used a Wacom digitizer, you can actually hover the pen, and it uses magnetics or whatever. It's not capacitive. This is capacitive for the registering, and then Bluetooth for the pressure sensitivity.
The thing I took away from that was that the number, don't look at this as a 2048 sensitivity level Wacom style pad. Treat this as a stylus for your iPad with pressure sensitivity, which seemed right to me.
So while this will work again with any other app,
can you pair it with Penultimate? I didn't try that.
Like it's working with Penultimate, but maybe not paired.
Just tap and hold, just like on your.
Nope.
Nope. Okay.
Nope. While it will work as a capacitive stylus, it's really made to be used with these Adobe apps. So I'm going to launch the first one, which is called Adobe Line.
We didn't draw that.
We didn't draw this. This comes built in. I drew that, and I'll show you how I did that. Yeah, I'll show you how I did that in a second.
Okay.
This was the best, and I had my dad help me draw that. So
cool.
So I'll open a new app or a new document.
Okay.
And I don't need the instructions. And what you'll notice is, I'll turn that off, is that you can draw with your normal pen strokes, and there is actually pressure sensitivity there. At the end, it's a little more bulbous. I can do lighter.
It's better with the pencil, I found.
And I can show you the pencil right here. Right, so this is like for example, there's a light pencil, which you can barely see, but as I push harder, and even if I push harder and draw slow, it's still darker than a light stroke.
So I notice you're still keeping your hand off of the tablet.
Yes, and I've physically trained myself to do that. We mentioned that the parallax is a problem, and this actually has parallax. I actually don't need that. I'm going to pair this. Pair. And it's the same as that pencil and paper app, where if you hold down the tip of the ink to the Adobe app, it will pair.
I think you have to open the thing first.
There it goes.
There you go.
So you can pair there, or you can pair here. This is the same thing. It's paired, whatever. I have a pretty good battery, and there are palm preferences here. So if I click palm preferences, this is how you tell the app how you hold your stylus. And
left-handed, right-handed,
left-handed, right-handed,
claw, flat, whatever your grip is.
So I'm right-handed, so I'm going to choose here, and I'll actually illustrate what happens if I choose left-handed and what the parallax does. So if I give you left-handed, and I draw with a fat pen, I'm actually right-handed. You actually see, let me switch there. You actually see the parallax right there. See that gap right there? That's no good. But if I swap over to right-handed, and I might work with that kind of grip. I actually don't see.
Now it looks to
from
you like
my
the pen is
perspective
coming from underneath the.
Right.
Yeah, the ink is coming from underneath the pen. The problem. So we've talked a lot about parallax. It's actually a really big deal if you're trying to get any registration of lines at all. If you want to get one line to match up with to a join or abut another line, it's super important that you have the parallax right, because it's much easier to get it right the first time than it is to go back and erase it or correct it or whatever later on.
In addition, there is palm rejection. So if you go back to the app, I can actually toggle palm rejection. Now what palm rejection does is, again, disables your multi-touch gesture. So
does it do that on the app level? You don't have to go into settings to do that with this?
It does it on the app level.
That's
so
nice.
for example, I actually use for example, if I draw some shenanigans, I can actually use the rewind tool, hold down 3 fingers, and erase back, rewind. If I turn on the palm rejection, that will actually disable that. Or actually I have to press this button over here to turn that on.
Hey,
now I'm doing
So basically,
my rewind tool.
palm rejection says anything that's not the pen doesn't count.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to turn off palm rejection because I actually don't like it. And compared to an app like Paper, Paper is also free. You pay for additional brushes.
It ends up being like $15 if you get everything, I think.
I think this is more versatile, Adobe Sketch. It is also free. It requires a basic login with Creative Cloud, which is free. You don't have to pay for the monthly subscription to log in. But if you want to use, for example, the pencil or the Cosmonaut in this app, I actually like this app. You have the pencil sketch pen, which I like. You have your 0.5 millimeter ink pen. You have a brush, which actually, with the pressure sensitivity, I think is much better than the brush in the pencil app. And if you hold down on each of these pens, you can actually adjust the size, which you can't do. So I can do a fat brush
on paper.
And I can do a more opaque. I could turn on blending.
You can do that with the pencils too, right?
And I can do that with the pencils as well.
Options.
Everything. Which is really nice.
The other thing that I thought was really neat about this is those color palettes on the right come from Adobe's cloud color service.
Right. So it's called Cooler.
Cooler.
And you
K-U-L-O-R? K-U-L-E-R.
K-U-L-E-R.
It's like a ruler for color.
Yeah. Adobe has an app where you can take photos of color palettes if you're in wine country, for example, and you love the color palette of Napa, the color of the grapevines and the blue sky and the green mountains. You can take a photo and it will abstract that color palette into a color theme. So this five swatch color theme, which you can, for example, these aren't things I saved, these are just the basic ones that came in. So you can say, oh, I want to draw with just this color palette, and then you can, of course, choose your colors and draw as your heart desires.
It's worth mentioning that this app and the pen itself are both connected to Adobe's cloud stuff.
Creative Cloud.
So, Creative Cloud, they assume that your pen is going to be a personal thing that is attached to you, and when you sign up with it, it attaches to your Creative Cloud account, which means that you can take your pen to my iPad, sync it up by pressing that button, and then all of your stuff is on my iPad kind of magically, including your color palettes and including even stuff that you've drawn, and then it goes away when you log back out again.
Right. Not only are your brush settings and your color palette settings there, but this button I have on the side of this, if I tap the button, it will actually turn on this radio menu, and it will let you upload clip art, things like swatches and your preferred brushes right here. So this is how you access your favorites using this button. And that's just tied to your Creative Cloud account, like you said. So as a stylus, this is very comparable to the Adobe Jot, but has pressure sensitivity.
The pressure sensitivity is a good add. Now the problem I had was that it's a little bit slow.
It is.
It could be because it's purely software, but as it is right now, it's a little bit tough to use because you draw a swipe and you expect the swipe to be there, and it's just an infinitesimal lag.
So when you say slow, you mean latency. And
yes.
This is as we've tested all these smart styli, including the pencil and including the Jot, because there's an extra layer of Bluetooth connection. It's sending from the pen to here, even though it's a the low
fast,
power
close
Bluetooth.
connection, yeah.
And even though Adobe has told us that this is the fastest that Apple has certified any Bluetooth connection, it is still not the immediate responsiveness that you would get with a real pencil or pen.
I actually thought this felt slower than the Add-on Jot.
Yeah.
The Jot instantly responded in Penultimate, and it kind of it's hard to. You really have to use it in order to see, but it kind of made me crazy after 15 or 20 minutes of trying to draw something.
I can zigzag down here real fast, and you'll see that it's going to
vary the pressure as you go.
There you go.
Yeah, see,
it's following me as I zigzag.
I mean, you're never going to draw like that in the real world, but when you're trying to draw, if you're trying to do fast brush strokes or something, it's challenging.
And those, I think, the two things are the biggest barrier to drawing with these tools, these styli, is one, the latency, and two, just the feel of this. The hard tip is good. Having a hard tip gives you more of like that scraping feel as you're drawing.
But it's so slidey on the glass.
It's still smooth. It is, no matter what, it is not going to be this.
Yeah.
You can hear that scraping on paper, real paper, on glass.
Well, it slows you down.
The resistance is feedback.
But the thing that they've done that I like is the slide.
Yes.
So the slide essentially gives you a virtual T-square / straight edge to use on your drawings. And because it's in software instead of on paper, they can do some really neat stuff with it, which we'll show in a minute.
So the other half is the slide, and yeah, this is the big innovation. If you can see,
big is a good way to say it.
Well,
you almost have to turn on palm rejection when you use this. I found.
I am going to do that actually, and let me go here.
So the way the slide works, there's no electronics in the slide. It's just some contact points plus an additional one that gets pushed down against the glass when you press that button on the top.
It's capacitive. There's a button here, no power required. Pressing the button here activates a third contact point.
Right.
So you can see on the screen there is
I don't know that they actually can see on the screen.
A digital ruler, right? There's the two guidelines.
Rotate it 190 degrees. There you go.
There are two guidelines that kind of track.
As if you put a ruler down on top of the iPad.
And you'd actually, because this is just a mechanical device, you can actually approximate that with your two fingers in the app. So I'm holding my two fingers, and you can see that it's drawing that line. So what it does, though, is that it's supposed to be a ruler. Now, you're not like a ruler. In a real ruler, you would hold your writing device against the edge of the straight edge. You don't do that here. You put your pen down, and I'm going to illustrate for you. There's that line here. I can actually just draw along it, and it'll be a perfectly straight line.
And because it's virtual, you can do all sorts of things. Like if you want stuff from a French curve, or
if you want to match parallel lines and connect the dots. Like for example, I have 2 points here connected. When I draw it, it will draw only between those two dots. And it's all vector-based. That's the cool part. This whole
app is SVG-based, right?
All
it's like
SVG
extensions.
And this is Adobe kind of moving away from the rasterized layered approach of Photoshop and using really everything as Illustrator SVG-based.
Well, I don't think they're moving away from that. I think it's just,
for the touch.
It's just, I mean, it's just the right tool for the right job. Sometimes you want vector, sometimes you want raster.
And in here, you can see that when you mentioned French curves, I can actually have a French curve ruler and draw perfect curves.
So
you
access
really cool.
that by hitting the menu, the radial
There's
button?
There's a menu here. And
you can also get it off the radial menu on the slide, I think.
You have a lot of tools here. There's French curves, there's ellipses. If I want to draw a perfect circle, I can do that. These are things that are really tough to do without some type of guide.
Just to be clear, look at that circle though. You end up, where the ink overlaps on that first circle, you end up with something that looks like something you drew it by hand because it shows the thicker ink on the outside edge of the circle.
And this is on purpose.
It is on purpose, yes.
So I'm going to zoom in, and for example, the circle I can draw, I'm just basically tracing right like that. And that is a circle right there, which is really neat. The button here lets you swap between your different types.
This is all configurable too, right?
Yeah, so like if I'm drawing a polygon right here, the polygon right now is it has a hex right here.
Can you scale that stuff up and down, Norm?
Yes, you can absolutely. Because I have palm rejection
palm rejection on.
I can scale this hexagon up and draw a bigger hex.
So you can nest stuff inside each other. You can change the width of the ruler of the straight edge lines. Like it is. incredibly versatile in a way that like writing, drawing apps have never been for me before. The problem I had was that there's not enough screen to use the slide and the pen and my fingers and all the stuff I need. Like a 10-inch tablet isn't big enough.
Yeah, this is the iPad Air. This is, I mean, we were using the iPad Mini and we switched to the Air. This is definitely not big enough. They do have stamps. So when I said I drew that thing earlier with the skateboarders, it's actually, they have a stamp for skaters.
You had skateboard stamps?
And I'm going to actually hold and activate the gesture here. Again, this is why I don't like the palm rejection, because I have to do this.
Right, hit that button on the left.
And I can actually double tap on it.
I think you just tap the button, right?
Double tap right there,
okay.
And it does a stamp. And I can...
Well, I was much more impressed with you before I knew that. The neat thing about the slide is it is a tool that doesn't exist in digital drawing form,
right,
until this point.
And you can do a lot of crazy things. I think this is really meant for architects and just like designers to kind of flesh out their ideas. And the stamp tool, I think, is really neat.
Because you can make your own stamps. You can draw something.
In the future, you will be able to make your own stamps. Right now, it comes with a selection of, I think they partnered with Herman Miller, so you can include chairs. If you're doing UI design, if you're designing an iPad app, they have devices, so you can approximate, for example, what the app will look like in the iPad. So I can double tap here. Like again, the slide, once I move one off,
it goes away.
It goes away. So it needs to be on the surface, which limits then how far you can draw. I can double tap, there it goes. That's an iPad right there. You can draw some UI design in there. In the future, you'll be able to design something in Illustrator and import your stamps in here.
One of the problems right now is that you can't export a vector from this.
You cannot.
Because Illustrator doesn't know what to do with the extensions that they did to make the brushstroke stuff happen, and so all you can get out is a raster.
Right. So to export right now, you're basically just saving a JPEG, saving a PNG. You can upload to Behance, but to get that nifty, the texture of the pencil, that's another layer that Illustrator doesn't know what to do with.
It's not a standard actually right now.
So
I think they said that'll come next year, the SVG to other stuff. I like that app a lot. I like the idea of it. I do a lot of sketching for like stuff that I want to build. It's all straight edge stuff, which means that paper is neat to do what I think it's going to look like in the end, but it doesn't really help me with the making the actual thing. With this, theoretically, I would be able to make the actual product, but it's still time. The other thing is that you can use that straight edge for perspective stuff in the other app, which actually is super duper neat. So you can set a perspective for the image, and then the straight edge will lock to the lines of the image. So if you want to draw the corner of a house from like a 30-degree angle off of the wall, then it does the tricky stuff for you.
Right.
Which, if I'm not an artist. I have a really hard time with that stuff. This is a cheat of epic proportions for me.
So, for example, if I want to draw a house, it will actually, let me get myself back to a ruler.
If you tap the button, it cycles through the stamps that you've selected, I think, and the straight edges.
It will align to the perspective map.
They can't see because your finger's in the way.
And it's a little difficult to see, but there's in the back there's a grid showing the perspective. I can actually just go back to
take our word for it
and adjust.
Oh, there you go. So so when you lock the perspective you want, it'll lock your grid lines to that, and then you can draw based on that. So like I said, it's a cheat for people who can't draw perspective on their own, like me, to help them do that, and simultaneously use a T-square straight edge.
And it's not 3D modeling. I mean, this is not absolutely not 3D modeling. It is just a guide.
It is a guide to do 2D representations, 2D drawings in a 3D space for people who are not good at drawing 3D spaces. Yeah.
I mean, I had a bunch of fun, using the ruler, using the slide.
Yeah. If I could get an iPad that was the size of, say, an A4 piece of paper, or even like an 8.5 by 11-inch piece of paper, I would be very excited about it.
But I'm not an architect.
Nope, not an architect.
I'm not a pop artist. I'm not.
No.
I'm a creative, but maybe not in this way. And so this really has no benefit to me. We're still looking for something that will let us take notes or draw, like at least mimic the Moleskine.
Or just mimic graph paper.
Or mimic graph paper.
Yeah.
And none of these tools are it right now.
So they have another piece of software, though.
Yeah, so Adobe Sketch, which I will pop open right here. It's just another way of presenting your projects. Oh, there goes a light crash. And ties into Behance. So you have.
Is this raster or vector as well?
It's all vectors.
It's all vectors.
So it ties into your community sketches, and whatever you sketch here will upload to Behance.
This seemed a lot thinner than Line did to me.
Yeah, you're going to be mostly working on Line if you're going to use the ruler tool. It has basically the same tools, but it's just more tied to the Adobe Behance community.
One of the big things I felt about Line especially is that because it's relatively new, it's not really tied in with this Creative Suite stuff the way that I would expect. And I feel like it'll be much more, like if I could open an Illustrator document in Line, do a little bit of work on it with the pen, and then blast it back into Illustrator, that changes that workflow a little bit for me. As it is right now, it's kind of a neat place to start or finish or make a raster, but like you're not going to be able to use this with Illustrator, so that's kind of a bummer.
And the unfortunate thing is, a neat place to start is not a device that you're going to want to pay what they're charging for, which is $200.
If your company is going to pay $200, go nuts.
Yeah, if someone else is paying for it,
yeah.
I don't recommend any end user who's not an artist or a designer.
If you make money by doing art,
and you're an early adopter,
and you want to try it, fine. If this was, like I said, if you could use this with the Surface, I can't believe I'm saying this. If you could use this with the new Surface with the big screen, I would be much more interested in it.
Yeah, Adobe is releasing APIs for other iOS apps, just like the Adonit Jot script has APIs for different apps. But right now, this only works with Adobe's 2 apps.
Presumably, you'll be able to use it in the future with other pen apps. Hopefully, at some point, Apple or someone will do pen APIs. They didn't talk about it at WWDC last week, though.
No. So there goes the spectrum of styli.
That's
for iOS. You have your dumb cosmonaut sausage. You have your.
Just to be clear, I don't dislike the cosmonaut sausage.
I don't dislike it. I think it's $25 for a piece
It should
of
be
sausage.
10. Yeah,
is a little bit too much. You have a smarter pencil paired with app, but only pairs with one app. Good app, expensive tool. I think that the best thing right now is still the Jot script.
It's $75. If you're willing to modify the way you write and take notes, you could actually use it to take notes in that Penultimate app, and it is okay, especially if you have a larger iPad. With a Mini, it's a little bit of a tougher sell. I think that I'm really interested in the slide. Like the slide, the ink and slide. The slide is the more interesting part to me because of the addition of a mechanical assist for a software square / straight edge is super duper neat.
And the good thing is you don't even need the slide to use this abilities.
You can just use your fingers.
You can just use
I have two fingers.
And that will work just fine.
There you go. So how much? It's $200 for that pair?
$200 for the pair. You can only buy it as a pair on Adobe's website. On sale today.
The apps are free for everyone, though, right?
Apps are free. You just need a Creative Cloud sign-in.
There you go. So that's Stylus's, the state of Styluses today. We'll see you guys next time.
Styli.
Styluses.
Goodbye.